In today's episode, we're gutting the Rover. You know you're in the realms of cheap cars when you leave it sitting for a month and the battery dies. Not surprising too much though, this is a Li-ion battery, and anybody who knows about these things knows they're truly awful. That's what I got.
Now, depending on your sanctioning body, there are sometimes rules and regulations that dictate what you can do with the interior. In the case of Project 400, we can actually keep our full interior, apart from the driver's seat and as long as the rest of the mandatory safety gear is fitted. There is also nothing preventing us from removing the interior, as the interior is unnecessary weight to carry around and can pose a fire hazard in the event of an accident. We decided to go with the remove it option. I will note at this point there are a few bits and pieces that will be kept to aid us during the race, and things like the lights and windows I will address in a future episode. For now, I need to get this thing started so I can turn it around and put it into position that I can work on it more easily.
These two cars are ostensibly the same. At least the body shell and running gear is a little bit different, but that's not a problem. This is going to be a race car, so it doesn't really need an interior. And this is my daily driver with over 144,000 miles on. The interior is reasonably trashed. There are some bits that are definitely missing and completely broken, so I'm guessing you can probably all see where this is going. Well, that's one part done. Now about 1 million more pieces to remove from this car. The first thing I need to do is clear some of the parts that we've been storing in the boot of this car for it out of it. Cue the time-lapse, I think, on this one. Future brakes, there's going to be an episode on these. Don't worry, I'll show more details of these later. I don't think this spare wheel has ever been used. Now, I wanted to remove this on my Civic, and unfortunately I broke the little clips, so I'm really hoping I can get this one out intact and transfer it over. Oh. Yay, it survived! Now, I must have filled loads of these over the years with nuts and bolts. Every time my family has a box of chocolates at Christmas, or a tub of chocolates, yeah, we generally try and keep them because I end up using them. So, right, now to go out of this thing, we'll set screwdrivers, spanners and trim removal tools. Just found a random nut, and I didn't even take this out. Slightly worrying. Well, I'm gonna leave the speaker in for a second because it's got a cable and greasy. And then cables that disconnect, I'm gonna label up what they do. It's gonna be an episode of how we're gonna wire this thing up for the race, So if I have everything labelled, it just makes my life easier. So for now, I'm going to get the other side done. Okay, that was different than the Civics. And then you have to take the back covers off and then do the bracket to keep them secure. Do you know what, Rover? I like your method. It's easier. Oh, thank you so much, Rover. They even label what side bits go. Right, next job is to get these seats out and all the seat belts. These bolts are usually pretty tight. I have done this by hand before, but now I have an impact wrench, I'm going to use it.
Apologies for no sound. Somehow while I was removing the rear seat, I managed to switch off my mic. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something about labelling the wiring up, that I would be doing an episode later on how the car was going to be wired up, and what I needed to do in order to remove the rear seat belts. With all of the boot area emptied and the rear seats removed, I turned my attention to the front seats.
Ooh, automotive archaeology. It says Graham Long Disc. No idea. I will be honest, after stripping the seats out, I really was hoping to find more change in here. Obviously to go to the budget of paying for this thing. I didn't find anything, sadly. However, it is reasonably clean in here, so I'm not cleaning a load of junk out. Next steps are to take the centre console out and then start stripping the dash. there are two little screws hidden behind these switches. It looks like someone's already tried to have one of these out.
If you plan on doing any work on your interior, I highly recommend investing in a set of plastic trim removal tools. Due to the damage, it looked like someone had previously tried to get the hazard light switch out with a screwdriver.
Heated rear windscreen switch. Don't think I'm going to be needing that. Hazard switch. Maybe requiring that.
If you haven't already, also invest in a set of radio keys if you need to get a radio or head unit out. In my younger days, when money was a bit tighter, I used to persevere with bits of coat hanger wire and broken hacksaw blades.
This, by the way, still works, so if anybody wants a cassette deck, call me.
I'm sorry to say, but since recording this episode, I have actually managed to sell the radio. If there are any parts you see that I'm removing and are interested in purchasing them, then please follow the link to my eBay store in the description below. As I did with the wiring in the boot, I labelled up all the connectors so I know what to plug back into them.
Now, HVAC controls, whatever you want to call them, heater, demisters, all that lot. We're not entirely sure as a team actually what we're going to do with this lot. So for the time being, I'm actually going to leave them in. What we definitely don't need though is an ashtray and cigarette lighter. So this can now come out. Right, I'm going to have a tidy up in here and then move on to the next item. Right, next job I'm going to tackle is getting rid of these front seat belts. So that involves pulling all this trim piece out and taking the seal out temporarily. Now, that's a good step anyway, because that is then going to allow us to take the headlining out. So.
As stated in our governing body's rulebook, we have to install a 5-point in-date racing harness for the driver, and we're not allowed to have passengers in the car, so none of the seat belts are required.
With the seat belt out of the way, I'm now going to turn my attention to getting the headliner out.
Yes, I am resorting to an impact wrench to remove the interior light. It might seem a little excessive, but the light was held in place via two very rusty Torx screws, and I really didn't want to chew them out trying to remove them by hand first. Once again, I broke out the masking tape and permanent marker to label up any electrical connections that I had undone.
Now this grab handle I'm robbing from the Civic, because with that it's broken.
I will note here that it turns out that all the grab handles are actually identical, so I could have fitted any one of the three from the Rover to my Civic.
Right, I believe the only things that are holding this in are basically the door seals. So, pull them out and this should come out the boot. I was right.
For some reason, the headliners on this model of Rover and the related Civic always end up sagging really badly.
You may have noticed me then, I just clipped in all the door seals, and there are two reasons for that. This car actually needs to stay weather tight. A, because I'm building it outside, I don't have an enclosed garage. And B, because when this car is shipped, it's probably going to be on what's called a roll-on, roll-off ferry, which means it is unfortunately going to be exposed to the elements. We obviously don't want it to get to our final destination, and that's for to pick it up from the docks and find that the car's been flooded. So, with that done, we can now turn our attention to stripping the rest of the dash out. Interesting little point, on a Civic, the ECU's down here, on the Rover it's not. When I first bought my Civic, it had a god-awful rattle to like the passenger footwell. I couldn't figure out what it was for ages. And eventually when I came to service the car and I changed the cabin filter, in order to do that you have to remove this bar. I found out that someone hadn't bothered putting the bolts in tight on this side, and this bar had been rattling around for about 12 months. Damn you, whoever that was. Fog light switch is going to have to go back in. It may not necessarily be this switch, it might end up going somewhere else, but obviously if we're driving around in the fog, kind of want a rear light on. This probably will go back in at a later date, but for now it needs to be taken out so I can get the instrument cluster out and get the dash out.
Once again I cracked out the impact wrench to undo some very small but stubborn torque screws. Yes, it is lazy, but I really hate fighting rounded off and chewed out fasteners.
This will be getting a few mods made before it goes back in the car. Mainly there's going to be some warning lights I don't want on because they're superfluous, and yeah, something that will be a secret for a future episode.
After checking to see if the dash was loose and discovering that there must still be some bolts holding it in place, I had to spend a few minutes trying to figure out where they all were.
whole dash loose, it's just snagged up. Oh, please don't say I got the steering wheel off. You don't want to do that. Now, I know that there are loads of car channels that have given this top tip before, but I will say it just so people don't get hurt. I've got to take the steering wheel off to get a dash. I was really hoping I didn't have to do this. With your wheel straight, obviously this nut has to be undone. Here's a lock nut. I'm going to use the impact wrench. So, with it loose, wind it back on a few turns, so when you pull the steering wheel off, you don't end up smacking yourself in the face with it. Unfortunately, that one was actually quite loose.
With the steering wheel out of the way, I could finally lift the dash out. It was surprisingly heavy.
Right, with that out of the way, we can now get rid of the next big item, which is the carpet. Right. All my tools out the way. Out.
Unfortunately, I missed out on the glorious moment of actually lifting the carpet out by just a few minutes as my memory card had filled up. Oh well, never mind.
The majority of the interior is stripped out. The last few things are to strip the boot lid and the doors. So I'm going to start once again at the back of the car and start with the boot lid.
Removing the boot lid panels involved me prizing out a load of plastic clips and getting the metal clips on the back of the panel to unclip from the boot lid itself, while also trying simultaneously not to break any of the tabs off the back of the panel.
That cover I am leaving. The reason I'm leaving it is because it broke on my Civic, and I ran the third brake light without it. Every time you put your foot on the brake in the dark, the whole back of you just lit up in red and reflected in the mirror. Got very, very annoying and distracting. So yeah, that's staying in place because I don't want that when I'm racing. The rear wiper. In day-to-day life, a very useful device. In racing, it creates drag and is unnecessary weight. Now, the race that we're looking at, time of year we should be alright and not really need it. Front wipers obviously we are going to keep. So this is now going to be removed, and hopefully we can sell the arm wiper blade off and the motor to hopefully recoup some costs. Now you may all be thinking that that's left a great big dirty hole in the back which is going to let water in. You're right, it will. I do plan to come up with a more permanent solution, but for now I'm just going to clean around the hole and cover it in some duct tape.
Whenever I tape up holes, I've got into the habit of taping the holes up on both the inside and outside of the panel. In my experience, doing it this way allows it to hold up much better to wet weather than if it was just done on one side.
Right, now we can move on to the doors. Now in order to get a door card off, you've got to pull this handle off. There's like a little C-clip, and what you do is you push the door card back and get a hook in and pull that clip. It is much easier said than done. Okay, I wasn't expecting it to happen quite like that, but that'll do. Now we can take the screws out and get this off.
With the window winder handle removed, I took out all the retaining screws and then got stuck figuring out how to unclip the door card.
I'm having to resort to, yes, it's a Civic manual, but they're the same car, to figure out how to get the door handle out. For some reason, that still seems to be attached to the door.
Oops. So, I broke it. Never mind.
While I might have broken the mounting tabs of the door handle, I was at least correct in figuring out that it was that was preventing me from moving the door card.
And door card.
With the door card finally removed, I could remove the inner plastic cover and then the speaker. With my newfound knowledge on Rover 400 door card removal, I just had to repeat it 3 more times.
With the door cards removed, that's the last big bulky item to come out of the car. So now I'm going to move on to all the trivial little tiny things that I kind of missed and glazed over when I stripped the rest of the interior. Now, stripping all these things may only shave a few grams, but they do slowly add up. And as one of the biggest supermarket chains here say, every little helps. First thing to go is that interior light. The next thing I'm going to unhook is this black cable here. Now this is actually the boot release. Now this being a race car, there's not actually going to be that much in the back of the boot, and it is still going to retain its lock, so we can just use the key to get it out. The reason I'm removing this though is it's, to be honest, one more thing that you could get hooked and tangled on if you've got to crawl out the car in the event of an emergency. So yeah, I'm going to disconnect this and then take the handle out at the front by the driver's door. The next small item I'm going to remove is the fuel filler cap, and as this is going, we can also take the release out. A teammate of mine was over a few days ago dropping some parts off, and him and I came up with a decision to remove this. The reason we're going to do that is purely because in the race that we're going to take part in, we have to refuel partway through the race. Having this in the way is just going to slow us down. The aerodynamics benefits from it are really not worth it. The worst thing that's going to happen is this is going to get stuck and we can't get it open. So yeah, this is coming off and then we can take out the release. So my Civic, this has a cool little thing on the back of it. It does to hook your fuel filler cap in. Rover, step up your game. The next item to remove is this, which is the rear washer jet. We're going to have a rear wiper, so there's no point in having a rear washer jet. We do, however, have a bit of a plan of what we're going to do with the pipe that runs to this, but I'm going to come on to that in a later episode.
the rear washer jet removed, I once again covered the hole in duct tape.
The next item to remove are these, the gas struts. Now, yes, that's going to make our life a bit more difficult, having to hold this open, but really during the race, that's going to be so seldom that we have to do it. Really, these are just adding extra weight. So these are coming out, and if we need to, we'll invest in a broom handle.
As well as being removed for weight reduction, they are one more item that can be sold to recoup some costs from the car and help pay for this entire endeavour.
We actually have the option in the race as well of running without the boot lid, and yeah, that's surprisingly heavy. We might choose that option. Right, the next thing to take out is this, which is the aerial, or antenna, depending where you are in the world. We've already taken the speakers out of the car, so really it's not much use. It's also going to create drag, which is going to slow us down. So this should be worth, I don't know, all 5 miles an hour.
With the aerial removed, this time I covered the hole in the latest self-adhesive sealant technology. Nah, I'm just kidding, it was duct tape again.
This little wiring harness that goes to the interior light can go.
I'm sure that I won't need those plastic clips in the future. That's definitely not going to come back and bite me.
The last thing to get out is that piece of sound deadening that goes under the footwell on both sides, and unfortunately goes behind the heater. This is going to be tricky to get out.
To remove the sound deadening in one piece, it would have required me to remove the heater matrix and therefore drain the coolant system. While I did remove the blower motor, I decided to leave the heater matrix in place and take the lazy option of using a Stanley knife to cut the sound deadening out instead. As well as removing the sound deadening, I also removed the duct that takes hot air to the rear footwell as it was no longer needed.
Well, apart from removing about 1 million superfluous plastic clips and grommets and also giving it a general hoover out, that's the interior gutted of the Rover, and so that's where I'm going to end the episode. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please hit the like button and share. If you want to stay up to date with this build, then please hit the subscribe button, which will be somewhere down there, and also remember to hit that notification bell. If you want to see more videos in this build series, then please click the link there. And finally, if you want to see anything else that we've been doing on the channel, then please click the link up there. Once again, thanks for watching.